conversations about science with the scientists themselves. It's the place to be to talk science. This is Coffee and Science with your host, Rob Parks.
Howdy, y'all. Just if you could bear with me a quick moment, I'm going to try to block my screen here with the chat. That way the delay in YouTube doesn't distract me from what I'm doing. Again, howdy. My name is Dr. Rob Parks, or The Rob, and I just wanted to yes, that voiceover is definitely familiar. Thank you. Thank you for Dora. I should start off by thanking Steaming Cup of Reason for creating that intro for me. I very much appreciate it. It's awesome. He also did another fabulous intro that I'm sure I'm going to be playing at some point. But to get to the quick of the matter is this is a show, Coffee and Science. Oh, ignore that. I'm no longer a hubby. Coffee and Science, where I will hopefully do a weekly show speaking with scientists going from the graduate level all the way up to established professionals. And it doesn't matter the scientific field, just so long as they work in quote unquote mainstream science. The reason for the show, or the impetus behind this show, is for a long time I've been following the flat Earth debate, if you want to call it that, or the flat Earth community. And the reason for it is I am fascinated by the mentality, as it were, or the first question that folks ask, particularly when I talk to them about the fact that there is a flat Earth community, is how can they possibly believe that? How can people still believe that the Earth is flat, or that we haven't landed on the moon, and so forth? And I have come to the conclusion that there is this distrust of authority, essentially authority. There's just this distrust of experts. And there's this, and it goes beyond the flat Earth. We are talking about COVID deniers. We're talking about at the risk of being demonetized. We're talking about diseases on pandemic deniers. We're talking about the anti-vaxxers, all manner of things. And it goes beyond just science. There are also these people referred to as sovereign citizens who don't believe in the expert testimony, as it were, of lawyers. And so what I wanted to do with this particular show was to highlight scientists and humanize them, to show that we are not an other. The experts are human beings just like anyone else. We have our likes, we have our dislikes, we have our challenges, and we are not something else. And hopefully, as we'll go through this, one of the things that I really want to have emphasized is that regardless of our education, or regardless of our expertise, we don't hold ourselves as being morally superior or superior in any way to anyone else. Yes, we can do advanced mathematics. Yes, we can do physics, we can do astronomy or genetics or what have you. But that doesn't make us better human beings. That just simply makes us different. It just makes us good at a particular field of study. So before I get into talking about myself, apparently one of my favorite subjects, let me go through the chat and say hello to others. Speaking of scientists, we have Dr. Clive Wells in the chat. Hopefully I can convince him at some point to come onto the show. I would love to hear more about who he is and what his research is. I know that he's written a book which is probably far beyond my understanding. We have Chris Durham in the house. Thank you for being here. We have Stephen Cup of Reason, obviously. We have Dora, my first moderator, and hopefully Tusk and Eddie are lurking somewhere. And I believe D. Elwood, howdy. And yeah, so this is Tusk, you may be rubbish at science, I don't know, but you are fantastic at the law and cooking. You are far better cooking than I will ever be, and you also have one of the sharpest wits I've ever encountered. So the format of this, and I apologize, I wasn't planning on doing this in my home. I was planning on doing this in a more professional setting in my office, but I had a wee bit too much fun last night over at Taddy Bogle's channel. Link is in the description. Please go over there and subscribe because it will bug the hell out of him, and that just makes me happy. So yes, and also the questions that I would typically ask are still in a very much of a beta version, and I would like to open it up to the chat. If you have any questions for me specifically, feel free to ask them at any point. Or if you have questions that you would like answered by scientists, again, please let me know. I'll add it to my repertoire of questions that I have in mind. So, Nerd Angle, I haven't seen her talk to you in a bit. I still contend that Loki is not gender fluid, but that's a debate for, well, we've already had that debate actually, which I think I won. So let me first describe, give you my CV, as it were. Like I said, my name is Dr. Rob Parks. I got my bachelor's degree in 1994 from the University of Florida, go Gators. I then subsequently got my master's degree from the same place in 2000. Due to a few reasons, I decided that it was that I needed a break. And so I left there to get a full-time job at Emory University. But 7 years later, I decided I'm going to go back. I'm going to finish off what I started. And I got my PhD from Georgia State University in 2016, if I've got that right. My dissertation was on stellar variability in a broad sense. More specifically, I looked at the variability of the light variability of young stellar objects in the hope of attempting to characterize the physical mechanisms behind their variability, such as star spots, accretion, warps, extinction via the circumstellar disk. And then the other half of my thesis was dealing with being the first to directly image the surface of a star outside of the sun and Betelgeuse, which I did successfully. It took me quite a long time to get that paper out, but I did. I was able to be successful, and I was able to illustrate not only that I was seeing spots on the surface of a star, but I can actually watch those star spots rotate over the 56-day period. So that was really, really exciting. I still, to this day, it's one of my crowning achievements, as it were, so far. Tony B, howdy. My question is math discovered or invented? That is a very excellent question. Now, I'm sure Clive has his own opinion on this, but I would say that math is invented. Math to me is math to me is a language, very much like any other language. It is a description of the physical world as we experience it, and it is the precise discovered. All right. So that would be, like I said, if Clive, if you ever come onto the show, I would very much like to have that conversation with you. Like I said, I believe that it is invented because it is based on our own physical or our own perceptions of what the universe looks like. It comes into a very interesting, to me, it's an interesting topic of one of the many, many questions. If we ever find intelligent life in the universe, one of the things that I am very curious to know is whether or not mathematics is a universal language, whether or not Clive is right in that it is there and then discovered, as opposed to being invented by various different alien species. But yes, short answer is that I do believe that it is invented, in that it depends very much on our own perceptions and not biases, but our own perceptions of how the universe works. Third angle: could dark energy or dark matter be an aether that was initially hypothesized, or else could it either be the fabric of space-time? So dark energy and dark matter are two almost disparate concepts. I realize that both of them have the word dark in them. In an astronomical point of view, dark simply means unobservable. We do not know, in terms of dark matter, we do not know what constitutes dark matter, although we have some good evidence to suggest, or strong evidence to suggest, that it's actually neutrinos or something neutrino-like. But we see dark matter simply through its gravitational effects, as opposed to actually being able to observe it. By its very nature, at least at this point, it does not radiate in any part of the electromagnetic spectrum that we are aware of. Dark energy, on the other hand, is otherwise known as a zero-point energy, or to me, dark energy, we have observations which seem to indicate that the universe is accelerating, which was not expected by any of the previous solutions of Einstein's field equations. And so we believe that there must be something driving the universe to ever increasing expansion. Now, what that is, I don't think anyone has an idea. My personal yes, Clive is right. It is equivalent to the cosmological constant, Einstein's greatest blunder. Einstein believed, at the time that Einstein came up with relativity, he believed that the universe must collapse under its own weight, essentially. And so because that was not observed, he created the cosmological constant as a force, as it were, to prevent gravity from basically bringing the universe to a point. But to answer your question, Angle, my personal intuition is that dark energy may not exist at all. I think that dark energy is sort of the Mercury of the next scientific revolution. I think that while the orbit of Mercury was one of the cracks in the foundation of classical mechanics, I think that dark energy is going to be one of the cracks in the foundation of relativity. I think that our understanding of gravity and our understanding of space-time is not fully complete. Another indication of that is that it doesn't reconcile with quantum mechanics at the moment. So, yes, simple answer is like I said, my intuition is that dark energy is really just a gap in our fundamental knowledge of physics, as opposed to some sort of phenomenon that we have not fully explained, as it were. And there's also some question as to the supernova observations, because it begs the question: does the nature of a supernova change over time? Do the supernovas in the beginning of time, do they pop off in the same brightness or same luminosity that they do today? And if not, then we cannot use them as standard candles, and so therefore the distances that we're getting are maybe erroneous. Tusk, what are your thoughts on the theory that a black hole is not a void, but will release all of its energy that is absorbed during its cycle when it finally dies? I believe you're talking about Hawking evaporation. I have to admit that I do not. I am very fuzzy on Hawking's predictions of exploding black holes when they finally evaporate by Hawking radiation. But the problem so far with that is there is no observational evidence to support it. It is a hypothesis driven by rigorous mathematics, but until we find observational evidence to support his assertions, really there's not much we can really say about that. I do not believe that, I was asked a question some time ago whether or not there are such things as white holes where energy, there is essentially the black hole is an Einstein-Rosen bridge to another universe where matter falls into the black hole and then it's shunted out to another universe. Again, we don't have observational evidence to support that, and my feeling again is that it would violate the known laws of physics, because the energy coming out of the white hole would essentially have to create its own energy in order to go forward. One of the reasons why a black hole is the way it is because the object, if you fall into the event horizon of a black hole, one of the ways to characterize that is that an object does not have the speed in order to pull itself out of that gravitational well. Another way of looking at it is that the object does not have enough energy to move quickly enough to pull itself out of that well. And so if you think of a white hole, then you still have that gravitational well and you still have the energy problem. So I would not think of it. The Big Bang might have been a white hole. I don't know. And again, wouldn't a white hole be a singularity? Yes, I would think that it would be. A white hole would have to be a singularity in the same way that a black hole would have to be a singularity. Hence the problem that the problem that I'm mentioning. You would have to inject energy into the system in order for it to in order for matter to swarm out into the universe. So, is there an actual limit to the amount of energy or material that a black hole can absorb? Reason, your question. What happens then? As far as I know, to my knowledge, no, there is no. Well, I was going to say there is no limit, but that's not entirely the case. In one sense, there isn't. We can have the more energy or material that falls into the black hole, we believe that black hole is going to grow. And we have seen black holes that are what we refer to as stellar mass, meaning that they are few times or tens of times the mass of the sun. And then we get to supermassive black holes, which are the dominant structures within the galaxies, or these spiral galaxies, elliptical galaxies, these things out there. And these are millions, if not billions of times the mass of the sun. These are gigantic things. And so we believe that one of the hypotheses behind where these things came from is that you had some form of stellar mass black hole or some form of maybe intermediate mass black hole, and through galactic collisions, these things just became behemoths, things that fall in. Now, there is Hawking radiation, which goes into that whole evaporation issue. And in that sense, there is a certain limit, and that is the mass of the black hole. Not to get too far into it, but there is this, we do know that there is spontaneous creation of particles in nature. You have gamma rays, which are highly energetic pieces of light. And for reasons that I don't clearly understand, the gamma ray will spontaneously transition from an energy state to a mass state. And when it does so, it creates a piece of matter, an electron, and a piece of antimatter, a positron. Now, matter and antimatter, once they come into contact with each other, will annihilate. They will get destroyed, or more specifically, they will transfer back into energy. The mass state will transfer back into the energy state. Positrons and electrons are oppositely charged by nature, and so when the gamma ray is flying and it blows, and it basically spontaneously turns into a electron and a positron. They will fly off, but electrostatically they will attract each other. They will recombine and turn back into a gamma ray. Now, Hawking postulated that what would happen if you had this event happen near the event horizon of a black hole. It's possible that the positron will fall, the piece of antimatter will fall into the black hole when it gets created, and the electron will have enough velocity to actually escape the gravitational influence of the black hole. And when the positron goes into the black hole, it will then presumably hit the normal matter that's at the center of the black hole, and it will annihilate that piece. Eventually, over time, if this process, this Hawking radiation process continues, then you have the black hole essentially completely evaporates and explodes. Oh, single gamma rays cannot do that. Consider the center of. Okay. Clive has pointed out potentially a gap in my knowledge, which I appreciate, and I will have to look into that a bit more. Again, I have to admit that this sort of thing is not particularly my expertise, but hopefully I can speak intelligently enough on it to answer your questions. When matter meets antimatter, how much energy is created in the annihilation? Basically, should we be concerned with CERN? I don't know the answer to that question, the first part of that question, off the top of my head. Should we be concerned about CERN? No. I know that there has been some concern that CERN will create a mini black hole which will destroy the universe or destroy the Earth, or that it will detonate like like an atomic weapon. But I can assure you that that's actually not the case. That's not what they're doing there. The center of momentum, gamma ray, would be at rest, which is impossible. Huh. Okay. All right. I will have to. I will look into that. Like I said, that definitely seems to represent a gap in my knowledge, and I will attempt to fix that whenever I have the chance. Can we be in a cyclic universe and entropy reverse in the process? As far as I know, no. Entropy would not reverse in a cyclic universe. Can we be in a cyclic universe? At the present time, well, I have two answers to that question. At the present time, our observations have led us to believe that no, we are not in it. We are accelerating. We are not in the classical Friedman sense coming into the critical density is far less than the actual density of matter in the universe. Matter and energy in the universe is far less than the critical density needed to pull everything back into a point. Now, I had the opportunity to listen to Roger Penrose, and I honestly have to tell you, most of what Penrose had to say went right over my head. The two things that I remember from that talk were that, one, he basically made the claim that he stopped working with Hawking because Hawking, quote unquote, went insane. He didn't elaborate on what that insanity was, but I found that to be somewhat enlightening. The other thing that he mentioned, and again, I could be getting this wrong, but what he mentioned was that you could, in fact, have a cyclic universe if the universe. So if you take the expanding universe, wow, all right, Clive. If you take the expanding universe and you go to its natural extreme, where basically it expands to an infinite size, or the observable universe becomes infinite, however you want to picture this, we will run into something known as heat death. Everything in the universe, every structure in the universe will essentially become the same. Entropy will get to the point where there are no temperature differences, and so therefore there are no essentially differences between parts of the universe. The entire universe will strictly look identical. Well, as it happens, that same description, well, with some fluctuations, quantum fluctuations, that sort of description is almost identical, and according to Roger Penrose, is identical to the situation of a singularity. And so for him, we do live in a cyclic universe where the universe will, quote unquote, I'm using that too much, but the universe will literally forget how big it is and explode into another, well, not explode, it will expand out into another universe, which I found absolutely fascinating. Reason, what are your thoughts about life as we know it existing elsewhere, and how accurate is the Drake equation? That's a fantastic question, and as it happens, as I get older and I look more into this question, I become far more pessimistic, to be honest with you. So the Drake, how accurate the Drake equation is, I would say from a philosophical standpoint, the Drake equation is a very adequate way of determining the number of civilizations, of intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations in the universe. The problem comes into, and this was, so in the 1950s, there was this meeting of the minds and it basically over lunch. This to me, if I were to travel back in time, the age-old question, if you could travel back in time, where would you go? One of the places would be at this lunch table. I think it was at Fermilab. And you had Enrico Fermi talking about the possibility, and this was back in the 50s, and he postulated, where are they? If you have the possibility, if you make the assumption that life is inevitable, and that intelligent life will inevitably evolve out of that, where is everybody? And so that is referred to as the Fermi paradox. And there are a number of different solutions to it. I was told that there are like 26 different solutions to it. I don't know too much about that, but some of them, to give you an idea, some of them are, there's in fact there is a galactic federation who look at us and say, nope, you are too primitive for us to let you in on the grand secret that yes, you are not alone. Sort of the prime directive, as it were. That's an interesting idea, but again, that would require a certain sophistication of technology to shield any sort of observational evidence from us. And another one is put forth by Adam Frank, is that intelligent civilizations do not last long enough to actually attain the technology and the sophistication to colonize the galaxy. He believes that the current climate crisis that we are facing right now is ubiquitous, that every civilization is, in order to create energy, will do so via the burning of fossil fuels. They will reach to they will inevitably get to this sort of extinction event, and depending on how they deal with it, they will come out the other side, or they will essentially have an Easter Island situation where the natives of Easter Island drastically used up all the resources and died off. And so the equivalent idea is that the universe, that these alien species just don't get past that stage and get to the point of galactic civilization. Now, and then there is the idea that we may in fact be the first. Um, that we, as scary as that is, that we are in fact the leading edge of intellectual ability in the universe, or at least in this galaxy. The rationale behind that is that intelligent life is ubiquitous. If you do have life on a world, intelligent life is ubiquitous. It is the eventually going to happen, but it takes billions of years to get there. And so we're just at the beginning of the curve in order to see that. I don't know. That's a heavy weight or a heavy load to put on our shoulders, to think that we are in fact the first, the shepherds of intelligent life. And I don't know. That would be. But getting back in a roundabout way back to your Drake equation, one of the variables in the Drake equation is the number of planets that can support life. I think that's the linchpin. I think that number is exceedingly low, because of the fact that not only do you have to be in the habitable zone, not only do you have to have liquid water or some liquid substrate via which molecules can get together, have a party, get drunk, make children, that sort of thing. Not only do you have to have some kind of presumably water to do so, but if you look at Mars, for example, Mars right now looks somewhat Earth-like. But if we wait a few thousand years, it won't, because the inclination of Mars's orbit, or the inclination of Mars's axial tilt, ranges from 0 to 60. Ours ranges within a degree or so. And the reason for that is because we have a large moon, which is gravitationally essentially keeping us stable. If you have even on the time frame of hundreds of or tens of thousands or 100,000 years, where the axial tilt makes such a extreme change, which would drastically change the climate, you would have radical seasons if that were the case. I don't think life could survive, particularly not organized life, not multicellular or higher. Well, I guess there's nothing higher than multicellular, but hopefully you get my meaning. Vertebrate animals, I don't believe that they could evolve and reproduce and create on timescales of hundreds of thousands of years. I think you would constantly be destroying any kind of advanced forms of life in doing so, assuming that they even were able to get to that stage. So in that, you also have to have a fairly inactive star, which is what we have with our sun. You do not have a lot of radiation being driven out. And so I think that while it is true that given the number of exoplanets that we found, and given the number of exoplanets that we found, given the selection biases that we have for finding such exoplanets, it is appropriate to say that every star that you've seen in the sky or see in the sky either has or has had an exoplanet. Now, if you consider that to me is mind-blowing, because that means that there are billions of exoplanets out there. But the problem is, in my opinion, this is where I become pessimistic, is that to sort of take an argument from intelligent designers, which I am not. The Earth is rare. The conditions that make up the Earth are exceedingly rare, at least as far as we know. And so, because the formation of a large moon, which I go back to, it was essentially accidental. Well, again, as far as we know, is accidental. You would basically need a Mars-sized planetesimal to slam at an oblique angle to an Earth-sized planetesimal in order to form that moon. Now, I'm sure folks that are far more intelligent than I am can dynamically simulate the probability of that happening, but I would suspect that it's fairly low. So To wrap up, as I get older and as we're looking at this data, I become less and less sure that we are, that the universe is. Oh, I should also mention that there are thoughts experiments that are done with these things called von Neumann machines, which are or not really science fiction. The idea here is you need something that can basically 3D print, which we're starting to get to now. We need AI sophisticated enough to be able to autonomously create itself. And so the idea is you shoot off a probe, or von Neumann, as known as a von Neumann machine. It lands on a habitable world. It then sends out little drones, collects enough material in the surrounding area to come back and reproduce itself. It shoots off another one. And within a few million years, you've reached every habitable planet in the solar system, which I know, a few million years, that's nothing. In reality, for the span, we've been here for billions of years. So astronomically speaking, that's not very long. So again, the argument is, if it's easy, and this is also, the von Neumann machines are traveling around 10% the speed of light, which is again feasible. Again begs the question, where is everyone? This is not a brilliant idea that we would be the only ones to think of this. So, has anyone else seen Earn Angle? I've seen a video that we may be among the first 8% of intelligent life. I would be interested to know where they got that 8%, that number, but who knows? Von Neumann virus. Yeah, very possibly. Nerd Angle asked, has anyone else seen Earth's magnetosphere moving out to meet the solar mass ejections used as an argument for a creator? No, I have in fact not seen that argument. But again, I would not be surprised that someone might say that because we have a protective shell that God is cradling us and protecting us and all that. Which actually segues me into sort of the next topic of conversation. Nerd Angle, from a local scale to global scale, biggest hurdle the U.S. people face over the next 5 years, biggest hurdle for the human race over the next 5 years. That is a good question, but I think it ultimately boils down to, biggest hurdle. For the U.S., I think the biggest hurdle for the U.S. is getting back to our roots, which is compromise. Right now, I know this has been said, and I know to a certain extent it is very much hyperbole, but I'm beginning to think the extent of the hyperbole is becoming less and less. And that hyperbole is that we have never been so divided, except for the Civil War. I don't think that's as hyperbolic as some would claim. And I think the problem comes in that we have lost our ability to compromise. We have lost our ability to say, all right, you are in fact a human being with intelligent ideas, which I just don't agree with. But if you give a little, I'll give a little, and everyone will really have a bad day, instead of having a really shitty day because nothing gets done. So I think the biggest hurdle that we have in this country is, over the next 5 years, is trying to get back to this idea that this us and them, mitigating the us and them mentality. I think with a two-party political system, it's just natural to have an us versus them mentality. And I grew up in a heavily Republican conservative background, and a lot of my family, I heard quite a bit that they're not going to vote for a Democrat because they're just not going to vote for a Democrat. So this us versus them mentality has always been there, but at this point it's becoming combative. At this point it's becoming dysfunctional. And so I think there is just too much vitriol out there. When you start having members of Congress altering Attack on Titan videos to illustrate the murder of another, or to simulate the murder of another congressperson, and then obliquely attempt to assassinate the president of the United States, shit has gone too far. I think that if someone starts bringing canes into the Senate chamber, I will be very worried. And if you get that reference, kudos to you. In terms of humanity, the hurdle for the next 5 years is again is tied. One, we need to cooperate. It ultimately comes down to cooperation. I am a globalist. I believe that we should all be under a global system of government, or at least some overarching. Give the UN teeth. Give the UN actual power to implement global policy that other countries must abide by, including the United States. Because the biggest hurdle that we're facing is climate crisis. Is if we don't do something about the climate crisis, I don't know if I'm so pessimistic to say that we are beyond the tipping point, but we're fucking close. And so the biggest hurdle is we need to just get over ourselves, cooperate enough that we can actually come to we can actually meet these climate goals. And also, and I'm a big proponent of this, compassion. I think that we also need to get over ourselves to the point that there are impoverished countries in this world that need our help in not an imperialistic sort of way. We need to be giving over our technology to these developing countries so they do not go down the same energy routes that we did. So essentially, in order for that to happen, I think there has to be a massive globalization. Reason, one last question. How well is our scientific advancement being served by the education system, particularly at the pre-tertiary level? By pre-tertiary level, I'm assuming you mean like middle school and younger. How well is our scientific advancement? That's a hard question to say. There's a very hard question to answer, because that's another problem I have one of the main problems I have with the educational system is that it's not uniform. The fact that curriculum can be dictated via local ordinance is bullshit, in my opinion. The fact that high school the fact that we even have this argument of teach both sides of creationism versus evolution is nonsense. Unfortunately, we had a Virginia governor who made the faux pas, essentially flat out stating that, of saying that that parents, the opinions of parents, have no place within the classroom. At least and the point that he was trying to make is more along the lines of critical race theory and evolution and so forth. And he lost. Basically, the Republican candidate weaponized that sentiment, and we lost. And so I don't think that until the United States education system, and I can only speak to the states, until our education system becomes a hell of a lot more codified, unless teachers are given more power to come to a consensus to the overall curriculum, that all students, rich, poor, white, black, all students get taught with the resources that all students have. Because then you also get into the fact that we have this class system in our country that I don't believe is being addressed properly. That you have disenfranchised students of multi colors or what have you. I hate to say race, of multi ethnicities who are being disenfranchised because they simply do not have the educational resources in order to help these folks get to a level where they can have the understanding, the necessary understanding of physics, science, and so forth. So until we can actually provide that as a service or provide that nationwide, um, I I don't know whether or not I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how we're best going to serve these folks. But at the moment, I don't think we're doing it very well. But again, that's my own sort of personal opinion. What was I going to say about that? Oh, as a just a overarching trait, I am what would be in the past referred to as a federalist. I believe in strong centralized governance, be it globally, um, be it educational, or what have you. Biologically, there's only one race of human. Yes, yeah, that's the from a scientific biological standpoint, that is my understanding, is that there is only one race. I do want to approach this one subject. We've kind of touched around it. I am a man of faith. I am a non-denominational Christian. If I were to seek a faith community, I would be an Episcopalian. But at the moment, I do not feel the need to be a part of a faith community, so I am simply a non-denominational Christian. As if you watch episode 1 of Rob World, I basically hold up in my office, I have an Introduction to Astrophysics textbook, or Bob, big orange book, and I have my Bible. One does not inform on the other. I believe that science and religion are asking the same question, just in far different ways. I believe that Clive, you're a Sith. All right, fair enough. I got no problem with that. I really have no problem with that, because it's not my place to judge, and ultimately that comes into it in that I do not put my beliefs onto other people. I do not judge others for their beliefs, if so far as they, if someone said, I believe everyone should die, obviously I would have a problem with that. If someone says, I believe that women should be subjugated and children should be used as sex toys, I would have a problem with that. Nerd angle, I was Wiccan for 15 years. I was a high priest of 2 different covens, but ultimately I was dissatisfied with the Wiccan way and actually converted to Catholicism, of all things. And don't get me started on Catholicism. I was idealistic and thinking, if more people like me, the more people that have my sensibilities join the church, then we can change things. Yeah, fuck that noise. Particularly, I don't. The 2 major problems I have with the Catholic Church is the fact that women and people, the LGBT, I cannot get those on a letter straight. The queer community are not equal spiritual beings. That is utter bullshit. I also think that the pedophilia within the church is abhorrent. I cannot stress that enough. You have a sacred duty to protect these children and to nurture them spiritually, and you have failed in every way possible. And the church, to hide this is repugnant. It's not well, I won't say unforgivable, but it's damn close to being unforgivable. The priests who do this should be treated like any other human being. They should be prosecuted. They should be defrocked. They should be condemned for what they've done. More so because they have the sacred obligation. From a Christian standpoint, these folks need to be held accountable because they are held to a higher standard, because they have a sacred duty to their flock. But when it comes to the debate as to whether or not God exists, I find that debate to be silly to the point of aggravating. because one cannot prove that God exists. And actually, to prove that God exists is antithetical to faith. If you have faith, that means that you're taking a gamble. You're putting trust into God that He is true and that His teachings are correct. And without that, I think religion is meaningless. I think that relationship has no meaning, to be redundant. So for Christians to say we have proof in God, I think not only are they misguided in the fact that no, you do not have proof of God, and two, I think they're misguided because they're going against the teachings of Christ. Um, no one knows except the Father. Now, on the other hand, what I refer to as anti-theists are those who admonish all Christians, who basically paint us off with a whole brush and basically say we can use logic to falsify God. Sorry, I don't believe that either. In order to state that, you have to state that human logic is infallible, which it's not, because we are infallible beings. I will make that argument, and I will fight anyone tooth and nail who says otherwise. That we are in fact perfect. So, but that's that. Taddy, I love that. No, neither side has. Wait a minute. Hitchhiker's Guide. Nice reference. Nice reference. I believe that's Hitchhiker's Guide. But yes, I think that no side, regardless, pick a topic. Republican, Democrat, Christian, atheist, pro-choice, pro-life. Every side has their fuckwits because, well, we're humans, and you're going to have people of various mentalities within that, regardless of their own opinions. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. That's one of the questions that I'm going to ask scientists that I have is if they're willing to share whether or not they are people of faith, and how that faith, if that faith informs upon their scientific thinking, and why. One of the problems that I have, one of the reasons why I firmly believe in the separation between religion and science, is that with science, while this is impossible because we are human beings, in science you have to have no bias, or you would prefer to have no bias. Again, that's not possible because we're humans. But if you deliberately bring bias into the room, then you're not doing science correctly. I think that was one of the Einstein ran into this problem. One of the reasons why he refuted or refused to accept quantum mechanics was because the famous quote, "God doesn't play dice." He had a worldview. It's arguable what his actual spirituality was, but he certainly had a worldview that could not accept the idea that the universe was not wholly deterministic, and that's a problem. When you have evidence in front of you that suggests that it isn't, you go with the evidence. You don't go with whatever your worldview is. Your worldview must change with evidence. Galileo said this best, assuming that he actually said it, was that the Bible should be taken, I don't know if he said taken literally, but the Bible should be trusted up until the point that science disagrees with it. And I fully believe that. I believe that the Bible is complete allegory. I am a Bible literalist in no way whatsoever. But yeah, so with science, you have to come into it with as little bias as you possibly can, because if not, then you're going to be ignoring, or potentially ignoring, what is reality, because you just simply don't agree with it. Which is kind of going back to conspiracy theories and the flat Earth movement. I can really only speak intelligently about the flat Earth movement because I've seen it. I don't have a lot of experience with anti-vaxxers or what have you, but I suspect that the same ideas cross over. Is that we have that they want the world to be a certain way because that world is understandable to them. The world that we posit through science or legality or what have you is, for one reason or another, and again, I think this is a failing of education, for one reason or another, is just not comprehensible to them. Or they have such a strong bias that the world needs to be a certain way that they just will not allow themselves to believe it. And so if you have, and so that's a prime example of confirmation bias or just bias in general. And that prevents one from really seeing reality. Is if your worldview must adapt to the universe around you, not the other way around. Your worldview cannot dictate the universe. And it's odd, or not odd, but I was reading a book called Taking Back Astronomy by a creationist, which is I just do not get that. It was written by an astrophysicist. This man has a genuine PhD from the Colorado Boulder. I would really love to talk to that gentleman. But one of the things that he says is quite the opposite, is that your worldview informs science, that science must capitulate to one's own worldview, which is arrogance to an extreme that I cannot fathom. So that's beyond me. So, one of the questions that I've never seen a book written in crayon before. I bought the book used because I did not want that money to go to that gentleman at all. Linzel, I think his name is. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Surely be called Taking Back Astrology. No, it's Taking Back Astronomy. Oddly enough, one of the there's Luna. Luna, are you going to do it? Are you going to jump? Jumps. Oddly enough, one of the main points that he has to specify within this book is that the Earth is round. Like, if you have to specify that the Earth is round in your text about astronomy, and not flat, like, if you don't take that as a given, then you need to really readdress your audience. You really need to readdress your thinking. Hey, Demon Lord's in the audience. Lyle, what is your opinion on the one-way speed of light? I'm not sure I got to that point. Whose axe is that? It's my axe. That's Gimli. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I haven't been able to bring myself to get that. And there's an alarm going off behind me, which I am going to try to ignore because I don't want to leave the stream for as long as it takes. And so, hold on a second. That's somewhat embarrassing. Technical difficulties of a different nature. No, that isn't the fire alarm. I have sprinklers. You would definitely know if my fire alarm went off. So what was I saying? Basically, so there's a joke that when I was a physics or astronomy undergraduate, one of the things that we really wanted to do on exams or assignments is we're often asked, given these first principles, derive this equation. And so we really wanted to just basically start it, and then in the middle say, magic happens here, final equation, because oftentimes we had no idea what we were stumped on the answer, I should say. Lyell's arguments near the end, which I've skimmed, essentially equate to that, is that the speed of light problem is resolved because God made it that way. Magic happened, which is just aggravating to say the least, that a PhD scientist will completely disregard the idea that science should be completely separated from divine intervention. That's that is equivalent to saying lightning is created by Zeus. It's superstitious nonsense. So yeah, I don't prescribe to that. Oh, the guitar I do not know how to play, and that I haven't picked up in years. Yeah, no, I keep it around because I tell myself, someday I'll learn it. Someday I will learn how to shred. Well, actually, I want to learn how to play bluegrass and the blues. That's why I want to learn the guitar. Incidentally, my musical taste, if you were curious, to humanize me a bit, my musical tastes sort of run the gamut, but at the moment I am listening primarily to bluegrass and and a little bit of country, which I never thought I would hear myself say. But I love really all sorts of music. The only music that I have not really gotten into is opera. I can't do it. I just can't listen to opera. I can't listen to an entire opera. There are arias that I find to be amazing, but to sit through an entire opera, no, thank you. I just can't. I can't do it. Oh, my black cat is named Luna, and my tabby cat, who is over there, is named Sunny. So, Billy Strings. Yes, I love me some Billy Strings. William Elliott Whitmore, who I do not know how to classify, is also someone I'm very much a fan of. The Steel Drivers, I'm also a fan of. Dora, you know when it's over. And the Dead South. I'm starting to get into the Dead South. Although it's weird because they're Canadians, and it's just like, how do you know anything about that? Anyway. Oh, Coulter Wall, by the way, is Coulter Wall and what is his name? Tyler Childers. Fantastic Appalachian music, just fantastic. I highly recommend it. Where was I going with this? I was going somewhere. Oh yeah, cats. So yeah, I have a picture of Luna laying in front of Sunny, and I'm like, oh look, it's a partial sunny eclipse. So yes, that is. I named my cats that for that joke. There you go. Poets of the Fall. I think I know that. One of the other questions that I'm going to ask, or a couple of questions that I want to ask scientists is, what was your biggest hurdle when it came to completing your degree and to potentially doing your own research? What was the greatest hurdle that you had? For myself, I will admit, and I think it's important for me to admit, that it was my mental health. I have lived with depression and anxiety for all of my life, leading to some very dark experiences, which I won't belabor. I have been hospitalized a few number of times, and diagnosed with various ailments, and I could go off and I could have an entire different stream about mental health, but that was the biggest problem. That was the biggest hurdle I had with. That was one of the reasons. That was the primary reason why I had to take a break. Going from and this is the advice that I would give any undergraduate student looking into going into an advanced degree, is really take a hard look at yourself when in your senior year, or in the year that you're graduating. If you are comfortable with yourself, if you are in a good place emotionally, physically, then by all means, go for it. But if you have doubts, not about your science or not about what you're doing, but doubts about, you know, undergraduates, that's undergraduate work can be stressful. It can be, it can take a toll. And if that toll is significant on you, and you don't, and you have doubts as to whether or not you can, I don't know how to phrase it properly. If you have doubts that your health will be negatively impacted, severely negatively impacted by grad school, take a year off, take a gap year, get yourself right, because grad school is I was going to say harrowing, but that's not quite the word I want to use. Grad school is arduous. It is going to be I've had some of the most just awesome experiences during grad school. When you slam your head against the problem, for weeks or months, and then you figure it out, oh, that is almost orgasmic. That is just a fantastic feeling. But then you have the experience of slamming your head against the wall for months, which is not. You have incredible pressures put upon you by your program. Depending on your advisor, you can have tremendous pressures being put upon you by that. It is not a decision to be taken lightly. And with my mental health and the restrictions or limitations that I've had to reconcile because of that health, someone who is a paraplegic cannot be expected to run a marathon. Someone with my ability to do mental health, I cannot do rigorous research anymore. I do not have the emotional capacity to do so. That is not, and I do not believe that is a failing on me. That is life. That is a restriction that is placed upon me because of a chronic condition. If you recognize within yourself, I think in order to do, this is, I think, an obvious statement, or a duh statement. Self-awareness is key. If you are going to get into science, if you're going to get into any sort of rigorous field, be it science, medicine, law, what have you, you really need to be self-aware. You really need to know what your own limitations are and how far you can push things. Because if you don't know this, if you can push yourself into some really, really dark places, and so that is the greatest hurdle that I've had when it comes to my professional life, is managing my health, managing my professional health. For me, doing my own research is hard because there's not enough time in the day for all the YouTube videos and Facebook posts. I had to get off Facebook. Facebook is, it's a toxic place. I found myself comparing myself to people far too much for my mental health to be good. And then you have the fact that the algorithm is designed for the place to be toxic. And I also think that Zuckerberg is maybe not quite human. Whether or not he's an alien, that's up for some debate. Whether or not he's a robot, that's also up for some debate. But whether or not he's entirely human, I think that's pretty much settled science. Clive, you ain't missing much. I gotta say, my social media footprint is small, pretty much deliberately so, because again, I find it to be overly toxic. I find that you get echo chambers created, but I do want to branch out more on Twitter, because one of the reasons is to make professional contacts. There are legitimate there are positives to social media, and I don't think that is emphasized enough. I think we concentrate too much on the negatives. I think as a society we just concentrate too much on negativity. But I think that with the positive aspects, and one of them is connectiveness, and particularly professional connectiveness. And so I want to make more professional connections, and see if I can bring people on. And Clive, was not joking. If you would like to be on, I would love to have you on. You are tremendously intelligent and knowledgeable in your field, and I would love to know more about you and your personal journey when it comes to this. Because again, I want to be able to humanize people, or humanize. I was on ResearchGate, but I'm with you. I pretty much ignored it. What was I going to say on that? So yes, Clive, again, if you want to come on, that would be fantastic. Where was I going with this? One of the questions I'm going to ask is Star Wars versus Star Trek. I, of course, both for different reasons. If a gun was placed on my head, hello, Sonny. If a gun were placed on my head, if I was told by someone, oh, come here, say hi, hi. If someone told me you must watch either Star Wars or Star Trek for the rest of your life, and you cannot watch the other, I'd go Star Trek. Primarily because at least the original series, and to a certain extent the subsequent series, it does what science fiction is, I think, meant to do, what it's designed to do, which is to use fantastical situations to challenge social convention, to challenge tackle social problems like race or warfare or environmental issues. And I think Star Wars or Star Trek does that far better than Star Wars. Actually, Star Wars doesn't really address it at all. I love both, but for entirely different reasons. Kirk or Picard? I'm ride or die Kirk. He just, you get shit done. I grew up with him. I like the passion that he has. If he loses a single crew member, he just gets weepy. I love just his passion overall about things. Research is important, but of little use without taking into practical application. Yes. And yes, I would agree. Star Trek is science fiction. Star Wars is or space opera. I would actually classify it as science fantasy. James T. Skywalker. Thank you, Nora. Obviously, Picard. I love me some Patrick Stewart. Do not get me wrong. I loved me some Patrick Stewart. I think that Patrick Stewart, not that they would really lower themselves to ever do this, but Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen need their own show. If you have not watched either the show Good Omens or the internet show Staged with Michael Sheehan and David Tennant, your life is incomplete. I just say it right now. The dynamic between those two is the same dynamic between Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, and it is fantastic to watch. The chemistry between them is just, oh my God. If I could travel anywhere in the future time, it would be to have lunch with any of them, particularly paired up like they are. I would just love it. Oh, PhD Tony is a trick. PhD Tony and I have similar tastes in the fact that he can't stand Tolkien. Neither can I. I find Tolkien to be exceedingly boring. I love his story, and I really wish someone else told it. Yeah, his stories are excellent, but again, his writing is just horrible. I feel the same way about Frank Herbert, Hebert. I don't know. Dune. I can't get through Dune. His writing is frankly up its own. It's repetitive and up its own ass. But I love the story. I watched David Lynch's version of Dune, which I know is not really faithful to the books, but that is a fantastic But I love that story, I should say. Cimmerillion's like reading a history textbook, because that's essentially what it is. Good Omens is better than the TV adaptation. There, I'd have to disagree, but that is my personal choice. I love Gaiman. I do not like Pratchett, and it is very obvious who wrote which chapters in that book. I don't know what it is about Pratchett. I honestly don't, but there's just something that annoys me about his writing style. To me, it's almost as if he's trying to imitate Douglas Adams and failing. But I don't know who came first, so I can't say whom is irritating whom. Don't get me started on Robert Jordan. I find the Wheel of Time series to be wholly problematic on its issues of gender, and Sanderson is, again, just kind of boring. When it comes to writers, I actually, most of the books that I like are actually neither science fiction or fantasy. My favorite science fiction author at the moment is actually two, and that would be and I'm blanking on the name, the writers of the Expanse series. The Expanse TV show is fantastic. The books are better, as always. That would probably be my favorite. Bradbury is fantastic. He's hit or miss, but when he gets it right. He gets it right. Martian Chronicles is revolutionary. It is must reading, in my opinion. And Something Wicked This Way Comes is just really just fun to read. Babylon 5, highly underrated. I love me some Babylon 5. The most underrated sci-fi show that I'm aware of, that in my opinion, is Farscape. The most overrated, Battlestar Galactica, the new one. Asimov, I haven't given Asimov enough of a shot. Although the fact that I found out that was a serial groper kind of taints it, in my opinion. But I do need to give Asimov's work another shot, particularly the Robot series. Heinlein, yeah, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is a good book to read, but his analyses of sociology, particularly how the Earth would react to a lunar rebellion, is absurd. It's absurd to the point of taking me completely out of the story. The United States alone would not have allowed the Moon to do what they were doing. But anyway, and Stranger in the Strange Land is I think it's wish fulfillment porn, honestly, for Heinlein, to be frankly honest with you. But Andy Weir, oh my God, The Martian The Martian is fantastic. I haven't read Hail Mary yet. I'm meaning to do that. Moving on to something else. Strangeland is overrated. I would agree with that. Sports ball. I do love me some sports ball, particularly college football and hockey. I am a ride or die Tampa Bay Lightning fan. I was there when they were created, and I will be there when I am no longer created, when I'm dead. I love me some hockey. College football, I love as well. Obviously I'm a Gator. I grew up as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, and professional football I have problems with. Something radically needs to change for professional football because of the health risks to the players. I cannot, in good conscience, support a sport that has such long, when played at, and really this probably could be said about college football, is with such long-term health ailments that come from the sport. I find myself unable to do it, to follow that, or to really get invested in it. What I would really love to come to the United States is rugby. Rugby is awesome. And I think American football would be greatly improved both in quality and in health-wise if you took away the damn pads. If you take away the protection so that these folks do not have this this sort of inflated ability of their own immortality, then I think the hits would be actually a lot less. And yes, I will fight anyone who says that rugby is a harder hitting game. It's not, because of the fact that rugby players do not play with pads. They understand and feel the pain of the impacts. If you think that American football is not high impact, then you have not watched enough American football. Would I ban professional boxing? Do I like professional boxing? No, not really in any way whatsoever. And that goes with any martial art, physical contact sport. Would I ban it? No. I can't say that I would. There are limits to what I would consider to be, there are limits to censorship. I will not be one of these folks that says that censorship is bad. Censorship should be should be forbidden in any way. I believe that we, as a society, there needs to be a certain amount of censorship for certain ideas. But when it comes to banning professional sports, no, I'm not on board with that. Bobby Orr, oh, the iconic Bobby Orr, oh, the Superman pose, oh, that image, fantastic. Yes, I love rugby. The only real experience I've had with watching rugby live is there's a minor league. Well, I don't know if it's minor or major league. It was definitely felt like minor league rugby in Atlanta. And I've looked in this area to find any kind of rugby, and I just can't do it. Would I ban fighting with knives? Yeah, I think I would ban fighting with knives. But I get your point. I get your point in that there is a continuum to the harm that would be done. So yeah, that is a very tricky question. That is a tricky moral question, because there have been deaths in boxing. So yeah, that does raise a very valid point. Would I ban Street Fighter tournaments? Hell no. I would never enter one. I'm assuming you mean the game, because no, I suck at I suck at that type of video. Fighting video games, never got into it. Couldn't do it. Another question I want to ask my colleagues is, what is the biggest hurdle to our field, or your field? Would I ban banning things? Oh, now that is a tough philosophical question. No, I'll have to get back to you on that one, Teddy. I have also, Teddy, by the way, I've linked your channel in my description, and I've advocated that people should subscribe to you, just to irritate you, because you need to do more live streams. That last night was fantastic. What was I going with this? Oh yeah, what is the greatest hurdle that we have facing our profession? And for astronomy, what I can say is our greatest hurdle is diversity. We are certainly not as diverse as, well, let me rephrase this. There's a mentality among certain members of academia that academia needs to be a meritocracy, which is great. I agree with that in principle. However, a meritocracy only works if you have an even playing field. If people of all backgrounds are given equal opportunity to be raised up to the candidates of getting into grad school, getting jobs, what have you. But we don't live in that world. We don't live in a world where all of candidates are treated equally, are given the same equal consideration and um, same consideration and opportunities. So we need to do a better job at promoting this from the undergraduate level onward. The other issue that we have along those same lines is what we refer to as brain drain. So when it comes to underrepresented groups, what we're finding is that, at least in physics and astronomy, what we're finding is that we start out pretty well when it comes to the diversity issue. We start out with a fairly diverse undergraduate population, and then we lose them. We lose the poorly represented groups. I won't speculate as to why. I can tell you what I've been told, which is there is a lack of familiar faces. When you are a person of color and you walk into a room of a whole bunch of white dudes, you don't exactly feel welcome. You don't feel as if you are a part of that place. Again, that's what I've been told. I won't. Oh, Sean Hawkins. Hey, Sean. I thank you. I wouldn't classify what I did with Sleepy as a debate. It was more of a conversation, but I appreciate that you enjoyed it. So, and I also been told by folks that, particularly women, that to them that was given to them, it was presented to them that either you have a family or you have a career. You cannot have both. I have met colleagues of mine have debunked, or not debunked, but have bunked that thing. One of my friends and colleagues who I shared a graduate school office with actually gave birth during her, or had her child when she was a graduate student, was pregnant with her second one while with a prestigious Hubble fellowship. And actually, I had to leave her alone so that she could breastfeed her. So I probably shouldn't. I'll get away from that. But she impresses the shit out of me. The fact that she was able to do that. I don't know if I would have the fortitude to raise small children or bring up small children and have the workload of a graduate student or a Hubble fellow. I just, my hat is off to her and anyone else who does that. But Sean, you need to respell that. There's a space between from and Australia that shouldn't be there. Oh, and have fun demolishing QE. Yeah, I'll get into that in a moment. So where was I going with that? So yeah, so that's the biggest challenge that I see facing astronomy is the diversity issue, because I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I do not believe that and this is across the board, in that there's this belief that if you if you have a higher turnout or higher diversity, then you are somehow diluting the brain power, that we are bringing in diverse candidates simply to be diverse, and that they are in fact inferior and will do inferior science. I reject that hypothesis. I believe that if you are bringing these folks in, actually, from a selection bias effect, you are bringing in the most dedicated. You are bringing in the most dedicated, the most accomplished, because of the shit they've had to go through to get to that point. But ultimately, once a diverse, and this has been shown economically, a more diverse pool provides larger or better results. And so a meritocracy is fine. But if you're going to do a meritocracy, then you have to even the playing field at the lower levels in order for that to even be the case. Now, I had a great physics teacher in high school. Oh, so did I. I had a wonderful physics teacher in high school, AP Physics, Thomas Jordan, um, Dr. J. Yeah, he inspired me. Speaking of inspiration, one of the questions I plan on asking is what got you into science? And I knew that I wanted to be an astronomer since the seventh grade. When I read about the discovery of dark matter by Vera Rubin, I was like, this is cool as shit. I need to do this. I have, as is obvious, I did not go into cosmology. I have studied it, but I have certainly not gone into it because I realized that my level of math skills is insufficient to study that subject effectively. So I went into, obviously, I went into stellar variability. Finding aliens actually wasn't the reason why I got into astronomy, although it has become, it certainly has dominated my my drive or my opinions since going into undergraduate and onward. I want us to find intelligent life, not because I'm really interested in that intelligent life, but I'm interested in watching humanity lose its collective mind, for the implications that we are in fact not the only intelligent species in the universe. I want to. I'm going to have a big old pot of popcorn just to watch what happens. Us just completely lose it. Um, let's see. What else would I would ask? Personal hobbies. I would ask that, and I enjoy at this point my main hobby is reading. Well, I have two main hobbies: role playing games, primarily Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. Although I don't have enough opportunity to do either. And what got me into astrology? Nothing. Although I will admit that I do have Aries as a tattoo, mainly because I love the totem aspect of it. I love what Aries represents, or theoretically represents, which is dynamicism, a dynamic personality, assertiveness, creativity. So, so yeah, I do not believe in astrology in any way whatsoever, but I do have the Aries ram tattooed to my arm. Yeah, RPGs. I got into it when I was around when I was 7 or 8 or something like that. I've been playing for that long. My father came home one day and he gave me a clear set of dice and said, color these in with your crayons. All of the numbers are going to be blue except for this die, which is a D20. And yes, I literally have D&D dice and arm's reach. So it's a D20, and the single digits were blue and the double digits were red. And so, and yeah, that got me started, and I've loved it ever since. I love the imagination of it. I'm not an actor. That is as close to acting as I'm ever going to get. The idea of assuming another role and being able to experience adventures that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to experience outside of that. Hey, Nerd Angle, we need to talk. Well, yes, I will definitely take you up on that. The other thing is I love reading. Getting back to reading. As I mentioned before, science fiction and fantasy really doesn't rate as high as one might expect when it comes to my tastes in reading material. I am kind of a big fan of the classics. I have my favorite author, arguably, is Jane Austen. I've read all of her work, and that is the only author I can say I've done that with. I like English writing of that period. Far from the Maddening Crowd. There's another book that I love on human bondage. Of human bondage is another one. I love classics. I also love reading philosophy and theology. Of all sorts of nature. My favorite philosopher, not because so much of his I will say that my knowledge of, or my reading of philosophy is limited. It's fairly limited, primarily to the existentialists. But my favorite philosopher, simply from attitude perspective, is Nietzsche. Anyone who basically, um, in one point, talks about the deep understanding of meaning, and then in the next point talks about how women should not be allowed to have money because they will just blow it on shopping. That is fascinating to me. Like, what the fuck was going through his mind when he was, yes, God is dead. Women should not be trusted with money. It's like, really? Okay, sure. And he is such just an easy writing style that I appreciate. At the moment, I'm reading Kant. Um, so it was a real pissant. Can we all agree Stephen Fry is one of the best audiobook narrators? I have never heard Stephen Fry narrate a book, so I cannot say that. Is Stephen Fry one of the best? I want to say intellectuals that I know of. Yes, I will. I love hearing Stephen Fry talk about pretty much any subject. I can listen to him pretty much all day. And given his voice, I can imagine that he is fantastic as an audiobook narration. I personally have never gotten into audiobooks because I'm far more of a tactile person. I love the feel of books. I love the experience, the actual physical experience of reading a text. And so, yeah, so when it comes to research, I like to read. I don't really do research through YouTube videos or Wikipedia because, yeah, I like to read. Anyway, if you couldn't really tell. Politically, we talked about religion. Let's talk about politics. I've kind of gone over politics. I would ask my guests, what is your, if you were comfortable enough, what is your political leaning? I am a registered Democrat, and I am left. I will not say how far left. I cannot say how far left. Blue Marble reading an audio or narrating an audiobook. I would buy that. I believe that all folks should be the old Martin Luther King. I believe that folks should be judged by their actions alone, not by any other measure. I should believe that all folks should be given equal representation and equal rights under the law, regardless of who they are. I support civil activism. I support the rights of all human beings, whatever they believe, whomever they have sex with, whatever they identify as. It makes no fucking difference to me. So I'm very left on that, or I'm left on that. When it comes to financial issues, I have to. When it comes to government regulation, I'm also left. I believe that a well-formed society, a well-functioning society, must be regulated. I don't know whether or not it was Hobbes or Locke. I can't keep those two straight. I should, but I can't keep the two straight. But I do believe that if you do not have a regulated, that the natural order of humanity is anarchy. That if without regulation, then you cannot have a functioning society because there are too many disparate personalities, too many disparate agendas, and too many, as we're seeing now, as more evidence, we're seeing more evidence of this inability to relinquish personal liberties for the sake of society in general. What was I going to say on that? So I believe in heavy federal regulation. I do believe it can go too far. If it inhibits innovation, then you've gone too far. But I am certainly the financial market and this sort of thing is not my expertise at all. When it comes to economics in general, I am probably the most central. I'm probably still left, but I'm probably more central, more moderate than I am. I do not believe in a basic income or uniform basic income or what have you. To me, that is more of giving a person a fish rather than teaching how to fish. I think that would lead to. I think that would actually exacerbate the class differential, um, and so I don't agree with that. And yeah, there are a number of other points that I don't. From the United States political point of view, I don't believe in giving up the filibuster. Um, Although Manchin needs to fucking get over himself on a lot of other issues. I fully support the military, um, although I find that the United States spends far too. Do I believe in nationalization of industries? No, I do not. Well, do I believe in the nationalization of utilities? I would lean towards that explanation, or that I would lean towards yes on that. But I am very willing to change that opinion because it's a poorly educated one. I will freely admit that. When it comes to nationalization of other private industries, no, I don't believe. I believe government needs to regulate, but actually stay out of it. Healthcare, yes, healthcare is a basic human right. So healthcare needs to be free. Now, how you go about doing that, I'm not certain. I'm working with the. I reject the Clinton attitude of working with the pharmaceutical or working with the insurance companies. I basically think that's um, having foxes guard your hen houses. Um, I think that the pharmaceutical industry needs to be drastically overhauled in price regulate or price setting and so forth. But healthcare needs is a basic human right. It needs to be free. In the same way that policing is free, in the same way that fire prevention is free, healthcare needs to be free. But like I said, I don't know a single payer system. I don't know enough about the single payer system to have a strong or a good opinion on that. To be honest with you, I know the NHS does a great job or does a good job in the UK as far as I know, but that it apparently does have some problems, particularly in the mental health arena. As far as I know, it is far too difficult to get mental health services in the UK than it is in the United States, or at least in my experience in the United States. So, healthcare is built into your taxes. Yes, I would. I think that very much like how policing and firefighting, if that is taxpayer money, then yes, it should be within our taxes. Do I believe in heavy taxation? Selfishly, no. Do I believe in a sliding scale taxation? Yes. I believe that the wealthiest among us must be must pay a heavier burden of the taxation, or must feel a heavier burden on taxation, because that goes along with my philosophy that if you have, you must give. And that comes from a monetary standpoint. It comes from um, a skill standpoint. If you have, as I've mentioned, I think in another stream, if you have something to give to society, it is your obligation to give it. Now, obviously, there are balances to that. You cannot give all of yourself to something because you have to take care of yourself first. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, then you certainly can't take care of anyone else. You put your mask on first in the case of a airplane crash. Very analogous to overall. I think there is a considerable amount of consensus on the economic spectrum between the U.S. parties. and hence the left-right label is used in the U.S. to represent other distinctions. Well, you've got, I don't know about that so much. You certainly have, the taxation issue is certainly a dividing line between the left and the right. The left do not, or the right do not believe in federal taxation, particularly for corporations, because they still hold on to Reaganomics, the idea that corporations must be allowed to have spending capital in order to innovate. And once they innovate and develop and do their R&D, then the benefits, the cost benefits of R&D and these innovations will trickle down to their constituents or to their employees. That would be great if that actually happened. If the upper echelon of corporate America actually allowed profit sharing, equitable profit sharing, then sure, I could buy that argument, but they don't. So no, I don't buy that argument. Whereas the left, particularly the progressive side, I think for them, the problem I have with progressives is I believe that taxation is the only option, is that is the solution to everything, is just to tax the shit out of it. And to me, it's a band-aid. When it comes to progressive points of view from an economic standpoint, I don't hear enough about how we're actually going to solve the problem, other than to throw money at it. Nothing ever seems to trickle. Well, yeah, true. Once you get old enough, you start experiencing trickling. Let's see. What was I going to say? I'm going to be wrapping up the stream in about 10 minutes. I plan on this show going about 2 hours long. Last thing that I will, so my email is on the screen. If you have, or obviously my Twitter is on there as well. Speaking of social media, if you like what you see, if you like this format and you have questions that you would like, general questions that you would like folks to be asked to, yes, Clyde, we have to egress in about 10 minutes. And if you have questions that you would like answered by of scientists to understand who we are to a better extent, to personalize, and I'm sorry, my cats are deciding to fight each other for some reason, then yeah, please feel free to email me or DM me on what have you. I'm contemplating. I have a personal Discord, but it's primarily for RPG, for role playing. But I'm thinking of opening up a Discord for just my astronomical and personal kind of points of view, and just release that to the open public. Well, what I'll end on is actually the thing that I started on with my live stream with Riley. And I am of the opinion that, much like American politics, that this community has become, that this debate has become too vitriolic, that there are personalities on either side who are, well, let me go from a glober perspective. No one has ever been convinced by being insulted. And so if we truly want to educate these folks, if we truly want to bring people around to our point of view, and when I say point of view, yes, I agree. You are entitled to your own opinions, but you are not entitled to your own facts. I recognize that our point of view is in fact reality. But if we want to convince folks of this, if we want to bring folks around to our point of view, to reality, we need to have compassion. We need to speak to these people. We need to speak to folks with compassion. We need to speak to folks like we would speak to anyone, with respect, even if we do not agree with them, even if they have made inflammatory statements about us in the past. From Ranty's from a video rant he put out, I have heard that Riley refers to me as a moron to Nathan Oakley. It's fine. I'd prefer he didn't do that, but I'm not going to call Riley names. I'm not going to. Will there be a horoscope room in new server? Only if you include Ophiuchans. And so, yes, I think I think there's too much vitriol in this community. I know, and I don't know who started it, and I don't know how to end it, but it does need to end. And I think the best way to end it is to stop being vitriolic. Just be kinder. Just be kinder to each other. Kumbaya. Just be nicer to folks. Attack the argument, not the person. And so, yeah, I think that we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to professional conduct, or when it comes to conduct. I am never of the opinion that just because someone is wrong to you, you have the right to be wrong to them. My morality, my principles are not reactionary, or at least I hope they aren't. I very much try them not to be. If someone does something evil to me, I do not feel that I am entitled to do evil unto them. So I would hope that, and I know people don't agree with that. I know people don't follow that same mentality, and I like I said, I don't judge, but I do think that by treating people with disrespect and try doing so, and I know I'm hypocritical in this. I know that I have, on occasion, in Discord and on some streams, badmouthed. I hope I have badmouthed their position and not the person. I really hope that I try not to badmouth folks specifically, the character of these folks. But there are just some people like Oakley and QE. I just, oh my God, and FTFE. I just, it's really hard not to be judgmental. And so yeah, just be nice. Just be nicer to each other. Even if we get one away from the lunacy, the delusional, narcissistic, grandiose sociopaths will never come around. Yeah, I do believe that there are. No, I won't say that. I believe folks that are so ingrained, for one reason or another, they can be turned around, because I believe that these folks are disenfranchised. These folks feel persecuted for one reason or another. I don't know what that reason is, and I think it might vary from folks to folks, but given some of the undertones, the sort of more disgusting undertones of conspiracy theories, I have a feeling as to there is a commonality among their persecution. I'm not saying they are persecuted. I'm not saying they are victims of persecution. What I am saying is they feel that way. And what I believe, if we are to bring them around to our way of thinking or reality, we need to recognize this. We need to recognize that these folks feel persecuted, and that feeling is valid. Whether or not they are persecuted is really not an issue. What is at issue is they have feelings, and those feelings are valid. Whether or not they're real or true or justified, that is not for us to say. For us, it is simply to recognize that they are valid, and to try to figure out if we can solve them, if we can make them feel less persecuted. So yeah. FGFC said on the other night, if you're civil to him, he'll be civil to you. Again, I don't subscribe to that. Um, if you insult me, you can insult me, you can berate me, you can call me a moron, you can call me all manner of things. It's not, I hope that does not change my the way that I treat you. I disagree with that mentality fundamentally. But again, I'm human and I'm a hypocrite. And so therefore I'm not always I'm not always going to be found innocent of that. But yeah, and but to get to your point, the debate was civil. I think the discussion that I had with Riley was civil. I think that overall he was civil and polite. I mean, we raised our voices a number of times, but I think at least him to me, his personal attacks against me were limited. I do not care that he doesn't think that I'm a scientist because um, this might be a little harsh, but I don't respect his opinion in that regard, and so therefore it has no effect on me. Um, and Now his treatment of Tony and Katz was deplorable. He attacked them. He attacked both of them. He called them names, and then he also attacked Katz's character, which I fought. I pressed him on as best I could. I don't feel that I did a very good job or an adequate enough job. If I could do it again, I would change different tacks with him on that. But he attacked Katz in a personal way that I thought was unfounded and really, I won't say inexcusable, but he shouldn't have done it, in my opinion. All right, so with that, I'm going to wrap up. If you have any final questions for me, please put them in the chat, and I will try to answer them. But next week, assuming that he's free, one of the reasons I did not have a guest for today is if you are from the States, you realize that last Thursday was Thanksgiving, and so it's a holiday. So I didn't even really bother asking a lot of folks, but the one person I did ask obviously couldn't make it because of the holiday obligations. But the person I hope to get on next week is Dr. Victor Ketsa. He is my brother from another mother. He is a geologist and an assistant professor at Perimeter College in Atlanta. And so I will be getting him on the. I will be getting him. Hopefully, I will be getting him next week to get on here. Some guests that I want to also potentially get on are Tabby Boyajian, who I mentioned before, who was a colleague of mine and we shared graduate office with. Dr. Peter Plavchan, who is the director of the observatory here at George Mason University. He does exoplanet science, and he is very well versed. I'd also like to get a few grad students on here. Courtney Crawford is an astronomy grad student that I know. And Maddie from Science Side Up, if you come across this, I would very much like to. I'm a fan of yours, and I would very much like you to come on, because one of the things that I want to bring out is, the difficulties or the challenges facing graduate students. Again, graduate school is not for the faint of heart. It is a truly gratifying but hard isn't the right word. The word is escaping me. It's gratifying, but just draining. Draining. So, all right. Appreciate the stream. Disprove all the token heresy. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Chris Durham. Thank you for this. And yes, Tusk, if you're listening, this was a very unique stream. I hope that if I ever have a video series of this, that you will pre-order it. Arduous. Thank you, Reason. Arduous is a perfect example of it. So, all right. I think I've talked about myself far too long. And if you want to hear more from me, I will be on the flip side next week on on Steaming Cup of Reasons channel next week. I will be there with the um, ever what's effervescent effervescent Eddie Little Rage. She's one of my favorite people. I'm really going to enjoy my time on the flip side with her. Um, Caddy, have I ever pre-booked a guest? Well, Vic has given me a presumptive yes, so you can say yes. I have in fact pre-booked a guest. All right. Yeah, I'm finding it hard to say goodbye. I'm enjoying this the interaction with you folks, but we will do this again next week, and hopefully for uh, many weeks to come. So peace out, and always remember, no matter how dark it gets, you are stardust.